Are you gonna start?
Hey guys. When I said, "Hey, do you want to run it today?" You're like, "Yeah."
Oh,
That's why I was like, "Oh, okay."
I thought you
Usually
meant
you
like we
say
were
hi.
running, like what we were gonna be like talking about. I didn't
Well,
know.
so I'll be always the captain of hello, welcome in.
Okay,
Hello, friends. I'll be the Jim
I'm
Nance.
good with that.
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Something Like Therapy.
Hi guys, welcome back. um, I think I'm just a little nervous. I guess because this is going to be probably one of the most personal episodes that we've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, everything we talk, I mean, we're talking everything about like our lives and stuff, so it is very personal, but today will be a little bit more obviously because we're going to be talking about the one thing that is more important than every other thing that we've
Yeah.
talked about and everything in our lives when we talk about our boys. So yeah, it probably will be a little nerve wracking a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think it's one of the things that our entire, I mean, since we've had our two youngest boys, it, everything we do is based around this topic, and it was something that changed our lives forever. So
Yeah,
it's just it is a very sensitive topic, but also something that I think we are. It's become one of our biggest like strengths, like
yeah,
as a family. It's brought us together. It's changed not just us as as a couple, but I think as a family overall. And I mean like our, not just immediate family, but the family around us as
yeah.
well. So
I think, and if, obviously, if you just go off of the title of today's episode, we are talking about being parents of special needs children. Both of our boys, or two of our sons, were diagnosed with autism at a very early age. I think two, three,
mhm,
well, three. They had to wait until three to be officially
officially
diagnosed.
diagnosed.
But yeah, just really quick, like you said, I mean, it's like something that forever changed our lives. I think, when you talk to any parent, as soon as you have a child, it forever changes your
Hmm.
life. Your life is never the same. But of course, having a child with special needs, any special need, physical, mental, neurological, um, obviously adds a little bit more challenge to that parenting task. So yeah, it definitely has changed us, and I know we always, or we have in the past, talked about, I think it was just maybe even our last episode where we're like, don't let things define who you are. Like, don't
Mm.
let something like the title, like, oh, this is who I am. But honestly, I think this is one thing that I have, maybe not at first, but have kind of grown into, where I'm like very proud that it defines me. Like, I am the parent of a special need child. Like, my sons have autism and I'm their dad. Like, I will die behind that, that identifier. So it's one thing that, I think has obviously, when we'll go into it, like, changed us over the years. And that roller coaster, which it has been a roller coaster, has taken us on many ups and downs. But it's one thing that, like, I know will be that we will identify as for the rest of our lives. And like I said, I've come to really take pride, or actually not, I don't know if it's pride, but just like it
Well, it's
means
definitely
something to
something
me,
not to be ashamed of, and
Yeah.
also it's something that I think has helped us just evolve as, as people, as parents, as a couple. Like I think before the boys were diagnosed, we were just very much set in, a certain way of thinking. And
Yeah, like every
it's just,
parent. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and like you said, just being a parent in general, it it makes you think differently. It makes you see the world differently. Like when, before becoming a parent, like you didn't see danger everywhere. Once you have a kid, it's like there's danger all over you, and you're just like all of a sudden that corner of the table it can become deadly, right? Like it's just it really does shape you and cause you to think so differently. But becoming a special needs parent, it it does I mean I don't know, I think it does alter your brain in a way
Yeah.
that it's very different from just becoming a parent, and I think, it is it sounds almost kind of like, I don't know, fake in a way when you say like, it's become like a strength, but it really does because you just become a different type of human being. I don't know. Like I'm trying to figure out a way to say what doesn't sound like we're trying to boast about being a special needs parent, but
Yeah.
it.
One of the best words I've always, seen when it comes to like families and parents and marriages of that, with children with special needs, is that you become very resilient.
Yeah.
The resilience that you build because, well, like we said, there's challenges to being a parent, but obviously there's a little bit more challenges and different challenges when you have special needs or you're a parent of a special needs kid because it's not like your typical day. There's a
Mhm.
lot more things added onto it. And it just kind of feels like, I mean, just, and it's on the top of my head because we just saw it one battle after another where one thing after another where it's like, okay, we figured out this, now there's this, and then we figured out that, now we have to think about that. And it's like it's micro in the
Mhm.
sense of just the day to day, like getting them to figure out what do they like to eat, how do I get them to eat more of this, or how do I get them to not want this stuff. And so it's like little micro battles that you win,
Mhm.
but then it's the macro battles of toddler to child to
Mhm.
teen to adult, and we'll go through more on that. But it's just like little battles and big battles, but you're constantly moving on to the next thing. So
Yeah.
that, like I said, that builds such a resilience with parents. And this is something that like we've obviously have seen in ourselves, or we've experienced through ourselves, but um, just with talking with other parents of special needs kids, and this is obviously something that's very near and dear to our hearts and something that will forever be close to us, that we even remembering back to like our church days,
Mhm.
when we were apart, we tried to get that going, and we started that special needs night with families, but getting the chance to just talk to different families, and there was a full spectrum of from autism to other different neurological things, to physical handicaps, but anything that requires special need was welcomed. And to just talk to families, it was very, it humbles you, and it also reminds you that you're not alone,
Mhm.
because a lot of the times something like this, and we'll kind of go into how we were when our middle son was first diagnosed, and that was our first experience with it. But it's an immediate like end of the world depression, dread, thinking like, what are we going to do, what's his life going to look like. And you kind of, if you're not um like keen to just understanding, like to not allow yourself to sink into that, you can just stay there, and you're not benefiting yourself, you're not benefiting your child. So yeah, but I think like being able to talk with other families, and especially those that are more experienced with it, which we were able to, um, allowed us to kind of change our perspective over the years
Mhm.
pretty much.
Yeah. So I guess we can start with just, kind of sharing our first experience with autism, which was with our son Jude.
Mm-hmm.
He was, everything was normal when he was born. Everything seemed fine. Started to develop normally as, we thought. And it was probably around when he was about a year and a half when we started to notice, like, wait a minute, he should be doing a little bit more, maybe
Mm-hmm.
talking. He did start to talk, but we noticed a little bit of regression starting to happen. So we knew that there was something, something was off. Like I didn't even think about autism because we've never had anyone
Yeah.
like talk about autism or mention autism. uh Maybe we've heard of it but didn't really pay much attention to it because
Yeah.
it was just not something that we'd ever seen. As long, I mean, now it's funny because now that we know what autism is, I'm like, oh shoot, there is
Yeah.
actually a lot of people that have autism around us and we just didn't.
And for those,
It's, you
thinking
know
that, like, because nowadays autism is very more
mm-hmm,
prevalent, like this, our son's now 15. So this was 14 years ago
mm-hmm.
where it wasn't as much. I mean, I know autism has been more and more over the last like 2, 3 decades, but like in our world, 14 years ago, it wasn't as like,
No,
oh,
it
yeah, of course, that's
wasn't.
autism. Everyone has autism now. Like,
Yeah, the awareness of it wasn't the way that it is
yeah,
now. And then also there was like the way that the spectrum is now, where it's just so wide and there's just so many, there used to be like Asperger's and autism. Like
hmm,
it was like two different things. Now it's just one huge spectrum.
yeah,
And I think when our boys were diagnosed is when like they started to talk more about the spectrum of like differences in autism. And
yeah,
so
and
that's still something that we are very much still learning on. But, like we were talking about the other day where you talked about Asperger's, I'm like, well, that's not even a thing anymore.
and
It's not a
that's
diagnosis anymore. Now it's just autism.
and when they were diagnosed, I think that is the reason why, because they still have the diagnosis of severe autism,
Mm-hmm.
which I think if they were to be re-evaluated and diagnosed, that might be different, just in the sense that over the years we have seen children and people with severe, and our kids just don't seem at that level. I mean, there's times, of course, with our, especially with Jude, like with stemming and sensory issues. However, I mean, I've just seen to be given the diagnosis of severe was just like, but again, I think it goes back to like before the spectrum was like, well, either you have Asperger's or you have severe autism.
Yeah.
So they didn't have Asperger's, so
Yeah.
it's severe.
So exactly. So it's just, again, it was something that we just weren't familiar
Yeah,
with. We didn't understand. So we began to notice some things, and I think it was, some of our family members had expressed a little bit of concern, like, why isn't he doing certain things? And I think part of us, we were in a little bit of a denial because it was just like, well, he's just a late talker, or he's
yeah.
just, I mean, my son, our oldest son, was at this point he was about 7, 8 years
He
old,
was
and
8, 8 or
and
9 then. Yeah.
and for the most part, I couldn't really remember. It had been such a long time since we had a baby, so I couldn't really remember. Like, okay, well, yes, I know. Our oldest, he talked, quick, like he was a fast early talker, so that I was trying to compare him to, our oldest Isaiah's development. And it just, of course, there were some differences, but I think there was a little bit of denial. And so when we finally were able to get an appointment and he was evaluated and we got the diagnosis, which we got it very, very early on. I think before he was 2, they couldn't give him the official diagnosis of autism yet, but they were starting the early
Yeah.
intervention and they were like, okay, let's get all this started, so he can, be pretty much in the system before he even goes into like his preschool age. So we can get him into early intervention.
And I remember the reason that we had him evaluated was because, again, like you mentioned, the speech, he wasn't talking, so we took him to that speech therapist, and she was the one that was like, you should take him to regional to get him diagnosed for
Mm-hmm.
autism. And that's when we were just like, autism, like, okay, I
Yeah,
guess we
and I
can
think
try
even then it
that.
just didn't really
Yeah, we
click.
were just
It
like,
was just
I
like,
think we left there and we were
no.
just like, oh my god, we need to find another speech therapist. She didn't know how
Yeah,
to work with him, so
it was just like, yeah, there was a lot of, it was denial. It was
yeah.
denial, and also it was a little bit of ignorance. We didn't know much. So fast forward to, finally going to regional. and them pretty much preparing us for ultimately this might be the diagnosis you're going to start preparing for.
Yeah.
And they said the worst thing that can happen is that we get all the services for him, and ends up being that he doesn't have autism, but he got all the intervention that he can get.
Again, with that severe diagnosis, it was, or like if it, because of
Yeah,
that diagnosis, kind of qualifies you for all the
right.
therapies.
But as time went on, we began to notice more and more things, obviously more stemming. He did the classic spinning, the hand flapping, that there was a lot of things that were like, okay, we're
Yeah.
starting to see autism begin to like really unfold and to show itself. So by the time he was, I think it was like a couple of months before he turned 3, was when he finally got the
Yeah.
diagnosis. In the meantime, we have another child very, very close together. And it was actually one of Jude's ABA therapists that was coming in to give Jude, therapy, where she noticed that our youngest, Jonah, was already showing signs of autism. And it was funny because I can't remember, we took, I think it was Jude for a follow up, and the doctor mentioned something. I can't remember if you were there or you weren't, but she said, if you have a child with autism, that the chances of their siblings having autism is 50-50. And when I heard that, I just knew, yeah,
Mm.
that he's gonna have autism, because this is, at this point, Jude's therapist is just like, yeah, you should really get him evaluated. And we were, it was weird because Jonah, our youngest, was more high functioning, and he was
Still is.
just very, yeah, he is, but there was little similarities and little things, and I thought, well, it's just learned behavior. He
Yeah,
watches his brother,
he thinks that's how you're supposed to act.
and I'm like, well, it's obvious, so even then there was still also a layer of denial with
Hmm.
our third child. But ultimately they both got diagnosed very close together, almost back to back. And the reason I think Jonah got the very early diagnosis was because of his brother.
Hmm.
So Jonah got diagnosed way before he
Two, I
turned
think,
3. I
right?
think he
Yeah.
was like 2.5.
Yeah.
Because at this point he was already showing basically all the signs of autism that Jude had had shown, in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it was honestly like two back to back blows that I don't know. I think it took a very, very long time to sink in.
Hmm.
I can't even tell you when that diagnosis sinked in. I think it was like when I heard Jude's diagnosis, I was in denial. When I heard Jonah's diagnosis, I think I was numb. I think I really just became like numb, and it it didn't it just, I don't know, it didn't register until maybe 2-3 years later,
Yeah.
when it finally sunk in, when we started to deal with constant IEP meetings, constant just therapists coming in and out of our home. It was just nonstop, like you said, like one battle after another. It really was just nonstop, and just always talking to people, always talking to therapists, need to get them into OT, speech therapy. Like it was no stopping,
Hmm.
and it was a never ending battle of, you know, what do we need to do? What kind of interventions do we need? What, like, how can we fix this? Like, what can we do? Like, are they ever going to live a normal life? Like, it was, it was
Yeah.
challenging.
I think it's kind of weird looking back on it because, I think being um, a young parent, I mean, I we consider ourselves young still. We're in our 20s, so young. Um, that like it took me, at least for myself, like it took me years to, like you said, accept the diagnosis, or not even to accept it, but to understand it, because I still, for some reason in my head, was just like, okay, so they have autism, and it's just something that, we're gonna have to work with them, or they're gonna have to work on now as a kid. But like they'll grow up and they'll kind of like outgrow this, and they'll start talking fine, and it will get normal.
Well,
I
really
kind
quick,
of
and I want to say real quick because in to kind of like what's the word, like just validate what you're saying, because we had their doctors, their pediatricians tell us, oh, don't worry, like they're just young,
yeah, they'll
they're
they'll
gonna
kind of
outgrow
like,
this. We
yeah.
had one of their pediatricians literally tell us this,
Yeah.
that don't worry, he'll outgrow it.
And it's like, okay, like benefit of the doubt, I mean, you're a doctor, you probably should be a little bit more professional, and a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
medically scientific. You shouldn't give false hope to people, because autism, and as a doctor, you would know this, autism is lifelong. There is no cure for it. You don't outgrow it. Um, you shouldn't really be telling parents that. You should be more on the sense of letting them know that people with autism still can live a full life.
Mm-hmm.
They learn to not, they obviously don't get cure of it, but they learn to live with their, for lack of a better word, symptoms, with sensitivity, sensory issues, or stemming, or, food, um, what do you call it, being particular with food, whatever the case, the many different things of autism, the many different faces, that they just learn to cope with it, and they can still live a full life. That's more along the lines. But don't,
Right.
tell someone that they're going to outgrow it, and that they will be, because, and that's why I said like normal, because it really, that is a word that I think is very damaging to a lot of parents with children with autism, because that sinks in that my child's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
They're never going to act normal. They're not going to do normal things. And that, honestly, I think was, I'm sure with many parents, the thing that kind of held at least me back from being able to move forward and accept it, and move forward to being more positive in, like what we were talking about. We will find a way to have them live a full life. They will get to experience everything, as all the joys of being a kid, and a teen, and growing up. It wasn't until years later, and I don't even know. I know you told me. I don't know where you heard it from, if it was from a podcast or someone told you, but it's something that stuck with me, and I hope that it does help any parents that are new to a diagnosis with their kids. But you had said, like, you have to, when you're a parent and your child gets diagnosed, or with whatever the case may be, with whatever disorder or maybe physical handicap that they may have, is that as a parent, when your kid is born, you have all these dreams and expectations of, like, oh, what's their life going to be, and what are they going to be? Are they going to be an athlete? Are they going to be the president? Are they going to go be an astronaut? All these things, and like, little league and sports and this and that. You have all these big dreams, and you're just waiting to go through with them, or go through, for them to happen, or for life to start with your kid. That you have to take a step back, and you have to mourn. You have to let those dreams go, and you have to mourn it, because that's not going to happen. That's not in the cards for your kid.
Mm-hmm.
Your kid's going to live a different life. They're going to experience things in a different way. They're going to go through them in a different way, and it's going to be different for you being their parent. And that really didn't sink in until later, but it did help. I think it helped us both a lot to, like, wow, that's good. That is a
Mm-hmm.
crazy way to look at it, because until you stop, and you're just like, maybe whatever you got to do, you got to cry it out, you got to scream, you got to just release it. That's not going to be. So what do we have now? It's kind of like clear the plate, and let's go. Because without doing that, you're only hurting your child's progress. You're only hurting your relationship with your kid. You're only hurting yourself, to not be the parent, the strong parent that you need to be to help them to live their full life of what their full life's going to look like.
Yeah, I think that's probably when that was a turning point for me as well, because I don't think I realized how disconnected or disassociated I was from my children, at the time, because I was just like you said, we have dreams, aspirations for our children. We placed the things that we couldn't do on our kids, without even knowing. We,
That's most parents,
we
yeah,
we
like live through them.
vicariously live through them, right? So it was something that I think we needed to we needed to hear, and we needed to kind of hit the pause button and just let that process take place, because you do need to like mourn, and you need to grieve, and you need to let go of all those things that you thought your child was going to be. And to be fair, I think all parents kind of maybe have to, at some point, whether it's in the early years, later years, or the adult years, kind of need to grieve, like, well, I thought my child was going to be this, or this is like the dream that I had for them, the hopes that I had for them. Like,
Right.
everyone kind of has to do that in a way. But I think with special needs families, it's a little different, because it's one of those things that it's you kind of have to maybe even grieve the simple things. Is our child ever going to live alone? Are they ever just going to be able to have a car, a driver's
Yeah.
license, a job? Like, I mean, all the things that we just think like are just the givens, like for special needs families, it's very, very different. So yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of the things that we were kind of hanging on to during our denial, period, when that finally hit, I think it turned a whole new, just uh, it just a whole our world flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And I think accepting and just learning, knowing that there was a lot of things that we didn't know, there was a lot of things that we weren't ever going to be able to fix. I think it just began to really sink in and really set in. and
Mm.
and I think one thing that I realize, and I'm still trying to kind of accept, I guess, is that as parents of special needs, you want to know all the answers. Like, you want to know, like,
Yeah.
why did this happen? When did it happen? Was it me? Was it my spouse? Was it the environment? Was it the vaccines? Was it, like, what was it? We want answers. We want to know why, and we want to know, like, who's at fault,
Yeah, as if like if we didn't, if like, whoever, God, the universe came down and was just like, this is the reason why your kid has autism. It's like,
Right.
oh, okay, they still have autism. It doesn't take it
It's
away. Like, okay,
exactly.
now we
So
just
it's
move
like,
forward. I don't care why they have it
you
anymore. Like,
realize, I think too, like the older your children get, that, because it's funny. I had a friend send me the whole thing that came up with the Tylenol causing
yeah,
autism. And I understand, like, we want to know why. And I don't, to say that you know finding out why autism exists or why it happened to my kids, like, if I can get a real legitimate answer, like, to say that it doesn't mean anything to me, like, that would be a lie. Of course
and it,
I would love to
yeah, and it would
know.
help
And
people for the future to like if something is causing it, maybe
exactly.
we don't do that
But
anymore.
like you said, is that going to change the fact
No, I
that
mean,
my boys have autism? No, it's not.
yeah,
It's not going to. So yes, maybe it'll make me feel a little better, or you know, I don't know. At this point, I can't even tell you what that would make me feel. But I think it would probably piss me off. Piss me off that someone is at fault. But it doesn't make a difference. And I think the
yeah,
older they get, the more that you're just like, okay, even if you were to tell me why this happened,
yeah.
are you going to tell me what I can do to better the life of my children, better the quality of their life? Like, give me those answers, because those are the ones that right now the older they're getting, they're starting to really set in, and like
Yeah.
those questions are starting to get more and more real. The more I see them get older, the new challenges that are starting to come, with with being teenagers, because there's a lot of challenges that happen in the early years. The early years are stressful because it's just like you're not just dealing with a toddler, but you're dealing with a toddler with so many sensory issues, so many, just their emotional awareness and their physical like awareness. It's just all over the place. And I mean, that's just toddlers in general, right? But when you lack communication, when they don't, when anything can set them off, like when food becomes a trigger, when
Yeah.
I mean, all these things, it's like you can't, it's very hard to navigate all those things when you're trying to figure out how to deal with a toddler, nevertheless with the toddler with freaking extreme sensory
Yeah,
issues, right? Like,
exactly.
so the early years are, I want to say, probably one of the most difficult.
Oh.
It's between the toddler and the elementary years. Like we had, and it's having two special needs kids that are on completely opposite sides of the spectrum with completely different sensory issues and, behavioral issues. I'm just like, this is when I knew, like, oh yeah, this is why there's a spectrum because Jude is way over there and Jonah is way over here, but somehow they both have autism, and yet you're telling me that I have to deal with it the same way? Like, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
I think one thing too, like, like you said, when we got Jonah's diagnosis, you said you kind of felt numb, and it was just because it was just like, oh my gosh, like it was just, got hit with the jab with Jude,
Mm-hmm.
and then here came the right hook with Jonah, like just knock us out,
We
right?
were already checked out.
Um, and again, it took me a while, it took me years, but what's cool is that looking back on it now, um, it's it's almost as if like I don't know, I don't want to sound cliche with the whole everything happens for a reason, but I think it was just destined because, like you mentioned, Jude and Jonah are so very close in age. They literally born in the same year. They're 11 months apart. They still do. I mean, but especially when they were younger, got mistaken for twins. It was something about them just being very, very close. And even to this day, like they share so much together. And like our youngest, even though he's the youngest for some reason, is Jude's caretaker. Like he always makes sure Jude is doing what he needs to, that Jude's safe. He helps him sometimes get like dressed or do his shoe, tie his shoe, or not tie his shoes,
Mm-hmm.
but like put his shoes on, brush his teeth. He'll put the toothpaste on his toothbrush for him. So he takes care of him. He's very, very close with them, and I feel that they're close. Um, and Jude, probably feels that closeness with Jonah too. That it was almost like we should have known. Like Jude has autism, of course Jonah's going to have autism, and I think again in the beginning years or when it happened, it was like, oh my gosh, now it's like they're both going to suffer with this. But I think it was just like like I said, kind of destiny in the sense of like that is the bond, that's the glue that they forever have. They were already going to be close. Having that diagnosis together for the rest of their lives, they're going to share that, and it kind of, let's see if I can say this without me breaking down a little bit. But we always worry about like when we're gone, who will be there. But they'll always like they'll always have each other.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's one of the little joys of getting past all the you know negative about it and being able to finally see light as they get older. So it's something to look forward to, little things like that. And then the other thing too about that, a lot of parents obviously they want to dwell on like the negatives of it, but I really think there is joy, and there is like a flip side to being a parent with
Mm-hmm.
a child with special needs, is that sometimes when you're a parent and let's say you have a fully neurally functioning normal child, um, you can put a lot of stress because again, those dreams and aspirations you have of them, like, okay, I want to put them into sports, and then I want them to be really smart, so I'm gonna make them read every night, so they're gonna be both smart and good at sports and all this stuff. You put all these expectations on them, so you're causing them maybe extra stress, and then on yourself too, to be disappointed if they're not. And you have all these things, and it's just like, you want to celebrate them, but maybe they're really not that great at sports, or maybe they're not that good at, they're not that book smart, so they don't do well in school. um, but then you have like the parents, the the special needs parents who, like, we're going out tonight, we're celebrating, like, why, what happened? Like, Jonah tried a hot dog for the first time and he's never tried meat before,
I
or like,
remember we got
like,
so excited the first time he tried a chicken nugget
yeah,
because
it's
all he would eat was fries and yogurt
exactly. It's like these
for years.
little things. Or like the fact, like Jude, remember how crazy Jude would never want to get into a car that he didn't
Oh
know?
my God,
It
yeah.
literally, like your mom's car, he was just like, nope, not getting him in. And now he just gets in. I mean,
Hmm.
hopefully, we don't get into strangers' cars, but like it was a thing. It was a sensory issue he had, and he got over that. And that was something I
Hmm.
remember was like, oh man, it's like, this is great. So like you get to experience your kids almost in a little bit more, in a better way, because you get to celebrate them more. You get to see just the
There's
little things that make them perfect in your
there's
eyes.
something, and I always say this, and again, I want to say, not to say, because we have a neurotypical, son that is fully functioning, and believe me, there's
He
a
has
lot
his quirk. He has his
we
quirks too.
celebrate, and I want to talk about how I feel his huge role in all of
Mm,
this, but
that's a whole little
I want to say
bullet
really
point there.
quick, like, the differences in raising, a neurotypical child versus a, special needs child. uh, it's the things we celebrate are so different, and there's
Yeah.
something like so pure about, special needs kids. Like, there's, I mean, not to say that they aren't brats and they aren't like
Because they're
they
still
still,
kids.
they're
They're
still
still
kids,
kids,
they're still
so
teenagers.
they
We
try the
still,
same stuff.
we get the sass from Jude and Jonah just the same way we used to get it with our oldest Isaiah.
Yeah,
I mean, there was, yeah, the attitude, the all of that. That still is a thing.
for sure.
And I we get some things from our youngest that I'm like, wait a minute, like, you're not supposed to be like this. Like, you're our innocent little, autistic baby
Yeah, we
boy.
think those
Like,
are like, oh, he has autism, so
shit.
he's just so pure, and like he
No.
only has like pure thoughts because they're so, he's
Oh
just
no.
simple.
The things that came out of that kid's mouth, it was so funny. Really quick share. We picked him up from school one day. I think he was like maybe in second grade. I can't remember. And just heads up, some bad words are going to come out. But the one of the aides, she came up to us and she was like, "Hey, we just want to let you know Jonah's been dropping some f bombs, and but we did notice he was using it correctly." And I'm like, "Oh my!" And I just, like, I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like,
So
but
that it's like a
again,
high
that
five
goes to
moment, like,
show,
yeah,
like, the things that we celebrate, the things that we, the little, like, milestones that we recognize that other parents wouldn't,
yeah.
because it's like, yeah, everything is a big deal. Everything's a celebration. I remember me the first time Jude used a straw. I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
God, he knows how to use a straw. Like, these are the things that as parents we just overlook
yeah.
with our, typical developed children. And not to say, like, yeah, of course we're not going to go around celebrating every little thing, but when you realize that your child fights every single day
Mhm.
to do just the simplest thing, the basic things, like, how do you not
Yeah.
celebrate it? And that's something that we talked about. And I tell you, like, my patience for people now is so thin, because I look at my two kids and I see how hard they fight just to show up
Just to
every
do
day,
norm,
show up every day,
yeah, exactly.
just to get in a car, just to get in a bus with loud ass kids.
To
Like,
put on a t-shirt because it feels like
yes.
pricklies all over their
So
skin.
I just, my tolerance for incompetence or excuses is just very, very low.
Yeah.
And, it's, and I know that's probably not fair for other people, but I guess I'm saying this because I have just grown to really look at my kids, and I'm just in awe of how much they fight every day, how much, no matter how hard it is, they show up. Like, they
Yeah.
show up every day. And I know how difficult. I mean, there's times where we go to the movies and Jonah's like, I got to take my headphones because I can't handle the jump scares, but it doesn't stop him from going to the movies.
Exactly.
He loves the movies, right? So it's just like, again, these are the things we celebrate them for, because it's like, yes, I can't imagine what they're going through. I can't
Yeah.
imagine, and
And it's like, for parents of fully functioning children, like it's almost like you want somehow, like, I don't want your child to be diagnosed with anything, but like somehow share with you the wisdom of what it is to, again, be able to experience your child and embrace them and celebrate them for the smallest things,
mhm.
so that you yourself can get to experience that.
Yes.
And again, it's almost like a little gift, a joy that we get as special needs parents that maybe those parents don't get. And the only thing I can compare it to is like, someone who's poor, and then they're given money. They spend their whole life poor, and then they're given money. You appreciate that money and you hold on to it, and
Mhm.
you value it more, as opposed to someone who's kind of like born into just rich family. They kind
Yeah.
of just always have money. Like, yeah, I like the money. I know it's important, and I value it, but you don't value it the same kind of way. And maybe that's not the best example, but the only thing I can think where it's just like, and I hate, I don't, I'm not saying that every normal child's parent is just, is entitled, or like they, what do you call it? Take it, not take advantage. Gosh, take for
For
granted
granted.
any of these things. But it's, again, it's only something that you can really understand when you experience it as a
Yeah.
special needs
And,
parent.
I want to kind of jump into now how this affected us as a family. And I mean, like, as a whole family, how this affected our oldest son, because this diagnoses, for both of our boys, came at a point where our son now is entering his teenage years, our oldest, and it was a struggle because he was starting to go into, new things, new challenges. And here we have these two,
Yeah.
fresh diagnoses from our two youngest, and it was very, very difficult for him, for our oldest son.
Even just like, sorry, really quick, like even if you take away the diagnosis, like he was the only son, and the only grandkid too, like in the family, or at least with your mom, for 8 years.
Oh
So
yeah.
even just to get two new brothers in the same year, it's like, wait a minute, now I have two other, like, what about me? So even just that, and then to add on top of it, oh, now they're diagnosed and they're special needs, which, just think about the title itself. I mean,
Mhm.
in his mind, they're special. I'm not. Like, it's just
Well,
a
to
lot of
this
things that were
day,
going through his mind, or could have been going through
yeah,
his mind.
until this day, now he's a father, and he has, his own child and his own challenges and struggles as a parent. But even till this day, he's just like, well, I knew you guys had a lot going on, and
Yeah.
just for him to say that,
We were blessed to have the
yeah,
person that we have for our older son. Like,
yeah, and I
yeah.
know that, we can always count on him. But that is something that's another thing that's part of this, being a special needs family, is that we never ever want to burden him
Hmm.
with the responsibility of raising two adults, because they're getting very close to being adults. So there's no longer kids. Now it's two, adult individuals. And I just know that that's not something that we wish to, to put on, because he has his own family. But how this affected us as a family, and how it affected him as a sibling with, a neurotypical developed sibling, was something that I think doesn't get talked about enough, because Even though, like you said, special needs kids have their challenges, but so do neurotypical developed individuals. And,
Yeah.
I mean, he struggled with depression, he struggled with anxiety. There was some substance abuse, there was things that came up, and, you know, there was challenges that he struggled with that, when I think back on it, the things that we went through with him versus the challenges that we were going through with Jude and Jonah, it was very, very difficult. And
No,
I
and
I
completely different.
I
Yeah.
will say this, and nothing against my son, but I will 100 times go through what we went through with our two special needs children versus what we went through with our oldest. So, again, like, just because your kids aren't special needs, they bring their own
Yeah.
challenges. There's being a parent in general is very, very difficult, but navigating that, and also, I don't think we'll ever fully understand how him, as an older brother, as a sibling of two special needs individuals, like how it affected him, like how it shaped his way of seeing the world, seeing, his brothers. Like, I really, I mean, I hope one day he does share with us, because I think it's completely different for a sibling versus a
Yeah.
parent.
I mean, and like, when we looked into it, 'cause like I said, we tried to start like a special needs, like a group for special needs families. And then kind of, I remember like looking into that, researching it, realizing that there's so many different groups, not only just for parents of special needs, but it's like siblings
Hmm.
of special needs kids,
There, yeah,
um,
even like grandparents, like,
grandparents, uncles, aunts, because the diagnosis, it's like a wave, and
mhm,
it ripples down, and it affects everyone's relationship with that child. And that's even something I know with like your mom and my parents, like how they were able to interact with them, or how they felt about it. And um, like I said, it's a different impact for each individual.
mhm,
But yeah, I mean, just with Isaiah, like, again, like I said, we were blessed because he, even at a very early age, was very understanding of like, okay, he, like I said, he could have easily took on the persona of like the victim of like, well, it's not fair, now they're here, and I don't get attention, or this and that. And I think he handled it like like an adult, even as a kid, even at 11, 12 years old, was just like, well, I know that, they have special needs, they have autism, so you know they're going to have more time
mhm.
needed for them, but I'm going to do what I need to do, sort of thing. And he's always been like that. He's always wanted to, like, I mean, at 8 years old, he already wanted to be an adult. He just wanted to do everything. So like, he's been dying to be an
He's
adult. And
been
I think,
old since he was young.
yeah, and I think now that he, like, he was dying to be an adult, and now that he is adulting in the real world, he's like, damn, like, this is not fun. Let me go back to being a kid. But um,
I,
yeah,
I
so
do want to share something that I think our oldest, I feel he showed me, and I think you could agree as well. Since he was a teenager, there was something he said. I don't remember exactly when he said it, but he said something about not treating Jude and Jonah any different just
mm,
because they were special needs.
yeah.
And that really, like, clicked in me, because I feel like we did see Jude and Jonah under this lens of like autism and needing, all of these like special treatments and therapies. And there's something about robbing your children, even as special needs children, like, of living a normal life. As, I mean, really, what does normal really mean? But, like,
Exactly.
just as an organic way of life, like, robbing them of that when you're just constantly seeing them under that lens of
Hmm.
like special needs.
Like, they're fragile and delicate, and they have to,
Yeah. And when he said that to me, like, of course, at first I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, they need this, they need that. And, but I looking back on it now, he was right. Like, there was something about not treating them any different, not letting them, get away with certain things because they were special needs, like still disciplining them the way we would discipline our oldest, obviously, communicating a little different with them, but still having the
Yeah,
same set of rules, still, you know um setting certain expectations of them, because of where they're at, or meeting them where they're at, but setting expectations that that they can meet,
yeah,
like things like cleaning up after themselves,
exactly.
doing. And it's pretty incredible because there is certain things that I look at my boys and I'm like, dude, like they're pretty independent for the most part.
I
There's
mean, the fact that Jude, when he's done eating, will put his plate in the sink and put the water to rinse it
Yeah,
off.
like
There are
it's just like
kids that are older than him that are neurotypical and don't do
there's freaking adults
that.
that don't do
Exactly.
that.
So,
Okay, like, and the things that I mean, I look at my boys' rooms and like they're always clean.
mm,
They're like, there's just things that I'm like, we've taught them to be as independent as they can be.
yeah.
Are there certain things that I know Jude he'll try to get away with not doing?
Oh, yeah. Because again,
Definitely.
they're
He's
still teens, and yeah.
the king of like, I don't want to do it because you can do it for me. Like,
And it's like, well, from what Isaiah said too, like I don't ever treat them different because it's there in what in how you say it. Like if you treat someone different, then it's gonna make them. I know as a parent, we just like I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. But if you're treating them different than you would, someone that's neurotypical or normal, by treating someone different, you're gonna make them feel different, and they're gonna think, why am I different?
mhm,
So again, when you treat them like a child, you hold them up to, like you said, expectations, the same expectations that we would. Hey, you got to keep your room clean.
mhm.
You got to get yourself dressed. You got to get yourself clean. You got to brush your own teeth. You got to clean up after yourself. That's what we would be doing with, that's how we raised Isaiah too. So,
Yeah, and I think again, we're coming from parents that have higher functioning, even though they were diagnosed with severe autism. Um, we do come from speaking from two kids that are or teenagers now that are a little bit on the higher functioning
hmm,
side of
yeah, even
autism.
Jude.
But even then, with Jude, he's nonverbal. He does have uh, communication, issues as far as like him really being able to
Yeah,
communicate his
yeah,
needs. But we have found a way for him to communicate as best as he can with us, and his teachers also say that, they have found ways to be able to communicate with him. Um, so having two kids on the spectrum, but on the completely opposite sides of the spectrum, I think has really helped us see autism in a whole different way, but also has, in a way, kind of like helped us navigate through autism in I don't know like how to say it, but just like you just never know, kind
mm,
of, more optimistic way, because there's things that we didn't expect you to do, but because his brother obviously is a great role model, that dude's just like, okay, well, I'll just try that, and again, like you said in the beginning, where it's just like having both of them diagnosed back to back was, at the time, seemed like the worst thing in the world that could happen. But looking back on it now, it's like, well, I mean, Jonah, the person that he is, the type of personality he has, he's controlling, but it helps Jude a lot
hmm,
because it's really pushed Jude to do things, to try things. It's really helped him to come out of his shell, because Jonah's like, "Come on, Jude, come on," and it's like he's his cheerleader, and I love that. So having those two types of you know children with somewhat the same diagnosis, but on the completely opposite sides of the spectrum, has just opened our eyes to just like, no, these kids are so capable of like, or capable of so much. And sometimes it's the parents' limited beliefs that is actually holding them back.
Yeah.
But we have the blessing of having, two kids that are like constantly showing us like, no, we can do more. We are capable of more. And, challenging them more, challenging them physically
Yeah.
with like working out and doing things, that we never thought that they could do. We just recently started training them and I'm like, oh my God, they're doing amazing. And I mean, I'm not we could have just been like, well, they're autistic, they'll never be able to do that, like,
Yeah.
and you'd be surprised how many parents do that because they believe the lie that they're going to be limited for the rest of their lives, and it's not true. It's not like that.
Hmm. And I think, yeah, from what we've seen, like you said, with Jonah and with Jude, just demonstrating like such independence, that it kind of makes us feel a little bit better about the future, in the sense of, like you said, will they ever be able to have a job, get a license, and hold a job, or live on their own? And it's like, I don't know, the way like Jonah is, it's not out of the realm of possibilities to be like, maybe he could live independently somewhere, maybe still monitored or in a community of some sort, but have his own place,
Mm-hmm.
because he knows, like, he can live on his own, in the sense of like keeping his house tidy and like washing his dishes. He already washes his clothes. I mean, like, he could live, like, he could, he's only 14, so like, what's the next 10 years gonna bring?
I'm
So
laughing because what you were saying about that he's capable of being on his own. I mean, I do, and I have hopes for that. But I have to share. We had an assessment for I think it was for like Social Security office because they're the ones that uh, take care of their benefits. And he, the person that was interviewing him asked him because they're basically going over like the safety, if they know what to do in an emergency. And she asked him, Jonah, what would you do if you saw smoke coming out of your neighbor's house? And Jonah
no.
Jonah was like, well, I would close the window because I wouldn't want the smoke to come in my house. And dude, I just like the interviewer, she was like she had tears in her eyes. She was crying because she was laughing. Or she was trying not to laugh. She's like, that's the best answer I have ever heard. I'm like,
Oh
Jonah,
man.
and we both laughed, but I'm just like, it's again like the things, obviously the logical thing. We're like,
Because
well, call 911. Their house is on fire, right? But
again,
Jonah's like, no, close my windows. I
yeah,
don't want that smoke in my.
you have to remind the assessor, like, he has autism, correct? When you tell someone with autism a certain thing, they're just going to give you the face value response. Like, that is the typical response of like,
I,
well, if there's smoke.
again, those are the little moments that I just like appreciate autism because I'm just like, that was the best answer. Like, obviously any freaking logical person is just like, well, yeah, that's not good
Yeah, like,
because
I
you're
would try to help
literally, you
them or
gotta
call
call
the police.
911, right? But it's like when you're a special needs parent, and again, you find the silver lining in everything. It's like, dude, that was the most genius answer
Yeah.
he could have given. Like, it made my day and it made the freaking interviewer's day. But again, like, these are the, I don't know, like, again, I just call it the silver lining because there's, there's people, everyone that meets our boys, they're just like, your kids they're just awesome. They're funny, they're loving, they're kind, they're so caring, they're so polite. And that just really shows me that it doesn't matter just because they have autism, they are still who they are. Like,
Yeah.
their personalities still shine. Like, and I think a lot of times, and I tell this to, I've had so many people reach out to me. They're, oh, my child might have autism, my grandchild, my nephew. And sometimes I think I come off a little insensitive, but it's not that I'm trying to be insensitive. It's just like, look, the diagnosis doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is what help, what services they're getting, what support they're getting. That's what matters
Yeah.
because even if the diagnosis they get ends up not being an accurate diagnosis, look at all the support that they got. Look at
Yeah.
all the help that they got.
I remember being upset that they were like, he's not severe. I can't believe they gave him
Yeah,
severe
just becoming
autism.
so
But it's like,
offended. And it's just like, and I, again, this is not to be insensitive towards anyone's, feelings about how they feel about autism. And I get it. It's something very, very difficult. But the moment that you stop and you get past the label, and really, honestly, it really is just the label that you don't you don't have to, like you said, like it doesn't have to base your whole child's identity or your identity as a parent. Like, all it is a diagnosis.
yeah,
you, there's so many things, great things that can come from that. And the worst thing that can happen is the diagnosis was incorrect, and they got all these services, and your child's actually better prepared, for the future. Like,
yeah,
and that really does happen. There's people that get diagnosed, and then they I think that's where it comes, where like, my child outgrew autism. No, they probably didn't have autism.
yeah.
They probably didn't have autism. It could
They
there's
were just a late
other
bloomer,
They're
or
just a late bloomer, speech delay. There's other things. It's not always autism. Um, but again, like, I just encourage people, like, don't get so hung up on that diagnosis.
yeah.
Get as much support as you can get your child everything that they can get, even if you're still on the fence about maybe getting OT or speech, whatever. If they're offering it, you just say
Yeah,
yes.
because I think we said it at some point too. We were like, we think every kid should maybe have speech and
Yes.
OT therapy through school, because OT teaches, activities of daily living, how to hold your fork
Hmm.
and spoon, how to hold your pencil, how to do normal things, how to go to the restroom. Like, that's just
All
called
those
living a
things
life.
help
Like,
your child's brain develop. Like,
exactly.
it really does. It starts to connect those, like, neurons, and they start to, like, oh, okay, so this is how this works, and this is how this works, and my hand does this. And I mean, we have a granddaughter now, and I'm like, that would have been awesome if she
Yeah.
could get therapy. Even if, I mean, for the most part, it seems like she's developing pretty normal. So I have, I'm pretty sure everything's going to work out fine with her. But
But if someone
she
offered her
would benefit
therapy
from that.
for it, yeah, like, why
Yeah.
why not?
If they would say, like, hey, she might have a little bit of take the therapy.
Yeah,
Who
like,
cares? Who
exactly.
cares? Like, and again, it's like, I get it. No one wants that label on their children. No one
Yeah.
wants that title.
I think more and more that's maybe hopefully going to the wayside, where people are like, the stigma behind the word therapy, or that they're getting help for something. Like, I think more people, like I said, hopefully that
I hope
people
so.
don't look at it as something like is wrong with your kid, or like, I don't want people to think it, like, no, they're just like, dude, everyone's in therapy and
Mm.
it's offered and it's free. So
There was a situation with our son. He just started high school, our youngest, and there was these two kids that are in his class. He's in um, a much more advanced special education class, and because he is on the higher functioning side of the spectrum, anyhow, he had there was these two kids, individuals that I guess were kind of picking on him, and the teacher finally had a conversation with them, like, hey, he has autism, and she kind of explained his diagnoses, and the kids stopped. And as far as we know, they haven't, continued the, picking on him. It seems like they understood. And what that showed me was that, people in general, but even like young kids, like, they're becoming more aware and sensitive
yeah,
to someone with special needs. And that's amazing, because think about when we went to high school.
yeah,
you know Special needs kids were picked on all the time. And even with our oldest child, our oldest son, he was like, yeah, you don't really have to worry about that. Like, kids aren't like that anymore. Being a bully like that is actually, like, you'll get your butt kicked for doing that. So it's like, there's no need to be so afraid of your child being diagnosed with something because they're going to get picked on or they're going to get bullied. I think the one thing that we probably need to be more aware of is the limitations we set on our own children. The limitations as a special needs parent that we set on our kids because of our own fears. I think those are the things that we probably should be more aware of
Yeah.
than our kids being picked on, because there's so much more awareness, and it's talked about so much more, that it's not to say that there isn't bullying and there isn't, unfortunately, not good people out there, but I think we do more damage in the home when we fear something like autism so much, when we set our own limited beliefs, on our kids.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's what's more damaging than anything, and that's something I think that we learned, and I feel like I'm still, trying to make sure that I don't do that with my kids, that I don't, we take them to a special needs CrossFit kind of gym, and I could tell they're kind of gentle with them, and I'm just in the back like, you guys better do that right. Like, I'm on them, because I've seen what they can do.
Yeah.
And I also see the game that they're playing where, like, well, they're not making me do that,
Yeah,
so I'm not going to do
they'll
it.
milk it.
But I still, hey, you showed me that you can do that, so guess what? Now
Yeah.
I'm going to expect you to do that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you have to be with your kids in general, but more with special needs kids as well.
Yeah.
We talk about the gentle parenting, but sometimes we forget that we need to also be, assertive with them,
Yeah.
because that's part of their development.
And I think, yeah, like with teaching your kids too about like acceptance, awareness, like you mentioned those two boys in Jonah's school. Um, One thing too that, I mean, we've mentioned it to each other before, that like being, because now I look at it as a gift, like we were gifted with two special needs kids, is that it really like changed us as people in the sense of being more accepting and aware of people with disabilities, or maybe people with like sensory issues, or just across the spectrum in general, to where, because like before, I mean, at least I know for myself, I was very like no patience. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I was in a restaurant and there's a kid having a tantrum, like just get the kid out of here. Like I don't know, just
Yeah.
leave. But like when you become a parent, and then especially a special needs parent, you just have a little bit more empathy and grace for those. Like you don't know what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if that kid, what disorder he may have, or what's going on in the parent's life or the kid's life. So you just have a little bit more grace for people. So I know that's definitely taught us that, and it's kind of taught us to just be a little bit more calm as
Mm-hmm.
parents and as people too. So yeah, definitely like teaching that to your children, the acceptance and awareness. And it's just as important for neurotypical kids and their parents to make sure that they understand. But again, I think like you mentioned, because autism and different things like depression and anxiety, like it's a lot more out in the open, and people are more aware that a lot of people have these things. There is a lot more awareness and acceptance for
Mm-hmm.
everything, which is good. And then to mention, like, or to add on to what we were saying, or what we were talking about, in making sure that like even if you're on the fence and you don't know, to try and get all the resources and therapies that you can, as much that you are taking the time to make sure that your kids have everything that they may need to help them cope, and to help them just not break down, is it just as important for yourself as well. And like
Mm-hmm.
we mentioned, there's therapies and groups that you can join for parents, for siblings. One of the biggest things, and that was something that we really honed in on and talked a lot about with our special needs family group that we tried to get going, was for parents and marriages, like
Yeah.
relationships. Because I think the last time we looked it up, it was like 50%, or it was a high percentage of parents that end up in divorce when they have a special needs
Mm-hmm.
kid, because it takes a lot. It strains a lot on the relationship, on the marriage, because you're investing so much time and effort and energy into the kids, that there's just nothing left for the relationship, for the marriage. So that's something that you definitely want to make sure it doesn't happen, and definitely kind of, even if you're not seeing any issues happen now, to kind of like be get in front of, so that it doesn't, so
Yeah.
that it gives, because also too, I mean, when you go to a group, and even if you're like, oh, like I don't feel comfortable, sharing in front of people, there's just something about being in a group, or all of a sudden you're just like, you know what, I do want to talk about it. Like, at least give yourself the chance to see, because there's a lot of times you may not think that there's stuff you want to talk about, or that things are affecting you, but once you get around people that are maybe like-minded and going through the same things, it kind of makes you feel like, you know what, I feel safe enough to admit this. And then it just starts coming out, and you're
Hmm.
just like, shit, I didn't realize I was feeling that, so.
Because there is a dark side to being a special needs parent and a special needs family, because there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of
Yeah.
frustration. And when you finally have a safe place to say all those things, it's like you realize that one, half of those things that you're feeling are just because you're scared.
Fear.
It's just fear. And also, it's human.
Yeah.
It's human. Like,
You think there's something wrong with you, like, why
yeah,
do I resent my child for having autism, like I'm so
yeah.
horrible, but it's like, you don't
You
resent, you're
don't.
just, again, you haven't mourned that whole thing that we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And I think it is, there is something very healing about being around families, because it's, and again, I'll say it like, not to sound like being a special needs parent is like an exclusive club, but it's very different from, being a parent of a typical developed child. Like, the challenges are different.
Yeah.
We used to see the groups that would get together, like the parent groups of the typical developed children, and they would bring their kids with them, right? And they would just be like, everyone's together, all the kids are playing. The special needs group,
Yeah,
it
we
was
can't.
a freaking challenge,
Yeah.
because we needed to have childcare in order for the parents to meet. And that was the struggle, because you couldn't, I think we tried a couple of meetings where they brought the kids, and it was like, oh my god, the
Yeah.
parents just couldn't.
Yeah, because you're
They
constantly
couldn't do
having to
it.
be. And that was something that I know didn't mention right now, but we had talked about before, where again, everyone's affected when there's someone with autism. But like when we had the boys, we weren't able to be around our friends and family a
No.
lot, because we couldn't take the boys to barbecues or trips to the beach, or, things like that. And a lot of the times, it was like we got like kind of like shit from it, from our friends and family, of just like, we'll just bring them, like the kids will just play and then we can hang out. And it's like,
No.
your kids can go play, you're fine with letting them go, and like, hey, stay right there, don't, as long as I can see you. I can't say that with Jude and Jonah, like, and I say that to also say, you shouldn't put yourself in a bubble to where you never want to take your children places. Again, when you treat them different, they're going to feel different. You do have a responsibility to take your kids to the beach, take them out hiking, take them
Mm-mm.
out to outdoor things. But again, you're going to just, it's not like, again, where I can just send them to go play, or as long as I can see you, you're fine. It's a little bit different,
They
but you still have to
require a
do it,
different level of attention, and I
Exactly.
think that's what people couldn't understand. They had a
Yeah.
difficult time
They felt we just,
understanding that, because they
yeah,
were just like, we even had like a couple of friends were like, well,
you're sheltering
you're
them.
sheltering your children. And
Yeah.
it's like, look, you don't understand what it is to have a child that can just take off and run to
Yeah,
the
he's a
middle of the
runner. Like,
street.
what exactly?
Yeah, like, what do you want me to do? You want me to just kind of roll the dice and let's see if he runs off to the
Yeah.
street or
Like,
not?
he doesn't
I'm
have a
not going to
sense
do that.
of danger, so do you not get that?
Yeah.
He'll just run into traffic, like.
And so we had to deal with a lot of ignorance and a lot of just lack of awareness, I
Mhm.
guess you can say. And it was, I mean, we lost a lot of friendships. It became very isolating. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we made was that we allowed those experiences to stop us from, creating or searching for other groups that we probably could have connected better. But
Yeah.
also, it's very difficult to
Mhm.
find, because again, we tried to build this group, and it was hard, because it's like we needed childcare. Unfortunately, the church that we were going to wasn't going to provide that, which is understandable. But that really caused us to end up giving up on that group because the parents were like, no, we basically are just going to go watch our kids in somebody else's home,
Yeah,
you know, versus us just staying home and watching our kid at our house. No one wants to leave the comfort of their home because you've created like a safety system.
exactly.
So going somewhere else was very difficult. And I completely understand. And that was a lot of the reasons why we didn't go places, because it was like, no, we created a safe place in our home. So now when we go somewhere else, like,
Yeah, and I
I
wasn't.
can't leave my child just to fend for
And we weren't
themselves.
going to go to someone's house and be like, okay, you're going to need to move that. That needs to push over there. I need you to take that. I need you to get that over. It's like, I'm going to go redesign your whole home just
Right.
to accommodate to
So,
my kid. So it's just easier, like I will find a way that we can hang out when I can get someone to
mm,
watch the boys. But it's not going to be fun for them. It's not going to be fun for us. We're not going to really be able to socialize. So it's really the point.
yeah, I think we could probably do a whole episode on that, on the just the challenges and the struggles of
Yeah,
like being a parent and trying to navigate, just
and the importance of figuring out ways that you get your family out there, because the more that you isolate the whole family from going out to things, they can begin to feel isolated. You begin to feel isolated. That puts more strain on your on your marriage, on your relationship with your kids too. So it's like, it is important that you get out there, but do it in your way, to not
yeah.
just stay at home all the time with them.
Really quick, one of the last things I'll share is we went, this was early on the boys' diagnoses. We went to a special needs screening. It was a movie theater that was for special needs individuals. And, it was supposed to be a free roaming place for them, and they could get up and, if they needed to run around, like it was catered for them for
Mm-hmm.
special needs. Well, for some reason, this is like when I think that whole program had just started. For some reason, there was an individual there that didn't get the memo, and she complained about one of my boys being too loud. And we were asked to leave. And I don't know if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember that day just feeling so defeated and so upset. I mean, I just was, I wanted to go down there and give that lady a little piece of my mind, but also just feeling so disappointed that the theater asked us to
Yeah,
leave.
I think the worker wasn't aware too, so like
And
they
that
didn't get
just
the
shows,
memo.
and then, and again, it goes to show where the awareness was back
Yeah,
then versus now. That lady would have been what you call nowadays canceled.
yeah,
Like, she would have been like, no, you need to go. Like, this is their space, this is their safe place. But, one thing I will say that we never once again took the boys to a special needs screening. That moment really challenged us to take the boys to a regular movie theater. And ever since then, we never, ever once took them to a special needs screening. I think we attempted it one time and it was so loud.
yeah.
And it was just
It's
like, you know what? This
it's not
isn't going
really
to
a
help my
good.
child,
Yeah, exactly.
because
Doesn't
I want
teach
him,
them.
yeah, I wanted them to learn to, when you go to a movie, you sit down and you watch the movie, and this isn't a place to run around. This isn't, and again, if we were in a setting where it was special needs and kids were running around, I'm not going to complain about it because I went to a special needs screening, right? Like,
Yeah,
but if I'm in a regular movie theater and there's kids running around, then of course, I would be like, yeah, it's kind of distracting. I don't know if I'd complain about it, but
yeah,
I mean, it would catch your attention, like, yeah, that's kind of distracting. So, but again, I don't know where I was going with that, but I wanted to say, like, it really led us to, push our kids to, hey, let's try this
yeah,
and let's see how they do. And they actually ended up doing really well until this day. We've never taken them to a special needs screening, and they do just fine.
yeah.
So at the time, it was discouraging and it was very upsetting. And that lady was wrong, and the theater was wrong. And that whole situation, how it played out was wrong, but it pushed us to try something else.
Yeah.
And I mean, till this day, it's still, I don't know why that memory just really stings till this day, but what it has shown me, the further I get away from that memory, the more that I realize like that moment actually ended up being a good thing,
It was a
because
defining moment to
it was a
like
defining moment
how
for
we
us.
were going to do things with the boys going
Yeah,
forward.
it really did show me like, you know what? Okay, that someone wants to challenge us in that way. I could feel rejected, or I could feel challenged to try something else.
Yeah.
And and
It,
again, I mean, I share that because as special needs parents, I wish I could say that you're not going to have moments like that. You're probably going to have more than one or two.
like I said, it goes back to what we were talking about, resilience.
Mm-hmm.
It builds resilience within special needs families when they have to go through things like that, when they have to feel that rejection or feel that awkwardness or feel that like you guys are awkward or weird, so stay over there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's also the fuel that kind of just like, no, F that. We're gonna do this. Like it's gonna
Yeah.
happen. So
And a lot of the times, a lot of the things we experience, it's more us that feel it than our kids.
well, exactly. Like
You know?
it's like we would, told Isaiah, like, as a teenager, you think you go to school and everyone's looking at you and they're worried about what
Yeah.
you're wearing and what you're saying and what you're doing. No one cares. They're
Mm-mm.
over there worried about how they look. So that doesn't change even as adults. And everyone's just them. They want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that they're okay. So once you begin to kind of like understand that, it allows you to be a little kind of live a little bit more freely. And it definitely helped us with the boys. And like, why are we over here living like we're ashamed of them or we're
Yeah.
embarrassed of them? Like, yeah, you should never be embarrassed of your children whatsoever. Like,
I think we're learning to embrace it again with like, finding the silver lining, or just like laughing at things. Like the other day, we took the kids to this like water park or whatever, and they were on this ride, and one of our youngest got stuck, and he was just like,
oh god.
oh my God, it was just so funny. And like, we were just sitting there freaking rolling and cracking up, and people were just looking at us like, dude, your kid's stuck out there. And we're just like, again, I don't know, it would have been like, 5, 6, 7 years before, like we would have been so embarrassed. And now
Yeah,
we're just like, he'll figure it out. Like,
he'll get back in. He ain't gonna die.
yeah, we'll get back in. Like, but again, it's just not taking life so seriously, not taking that diagnosis so seriously. Not that it's not. And I want to be sensitive again to people, because I get it. It's taken us a long time to get here. But I think if we would have understood, you know, if we would know back then what we know now, we'd realize like just enjoy it,
Yeah.
because either way it goes by fast.
Exactly. You only get one life with your kids, and you only get them being toddlers for a little bit, then little kids for a little bit. And I don't know. Even sitting here talking about how they're 14 and 15 is like blowing my mind, because I don't know. I still remember them as 2 and 3. So again, it goes by very fast. And if you have special needs parents or just neurotypical parents, like you just embrace it, and you
Hmm.
should, hopefully maybe just hearing this, you will begin to embrace the littlest of little things that they do, that it's just like, thank you for that, let's
Hmm.
celebrate this, that you're able to do this. um and yeah, and again, I think I just can't stress enough the importance of um, seeking out help if you do need it, because you will, especially if you're a parent listening to this and your kid was just diagnosed or you're thinking of getting them evaluated. I wish I can tell you that like, oh yeah, don't worry, it'll just be like nothing, but no, it's gonna be difficult, it's gonna be hard. But I think now, because it's a little bit more common, unfortunately, with autism, hopefully that begins to decline, and that we can, technology will make progress in being able to detect that earlier or something, to where, or they eliminate the cause of it, whatever the case. But until then, at least know that there are a lot more services and therapies and everything that's more available. Early detection, in the sense of like getting that early intervention right away. that can definitely help with like speech and
Mhm.
response and all that. So, you know, whatever the case is that at least you should understand that you're not alone, that
Mhm.
there's podcasts like this, that there's groups by the hundreds of thousands, I would imagine, either online or in person. But to seek that help, because
Mhm.
the more help you get, the more services that you're offered, take advantage of them. It's only going to make the process and the transition a lot easier on you and your children. It'll help you to just kind of be able to again cope, because as of now there is no cure for it. It's not going to go away, but you do find a way to make sure that your children grow up wanting for nothing and still having that normal,
Mhm.
at least what's normal to them, their childhood. So
And the more support, the more it empowers you to face the challenges that just keep coming. And
yeah, because it's going to
unfortunately,
keep
I
coming,
don't.
one battle after another.
Yeah, and my last piece of advice is, if you are a family, you're a married couple, please make time for each other
Hmm.
and yourselves, because I can't stress enough about how important it is for you guys to be on the same team, because it will, there is times where you feel like you're, whether you're the one that's the caregiver, like for me myself, there was a lot of times that I felt like the load was all on me, but that was really just because I wasn't, like, including you in a lot of the things that I needed to,
Yeah.
that needed to get done. And again, that was just because of just not reaching out and not asking for help. But also there was things that you, as a father, faced, especially a father of two boys. There was, you were grieving your own losses,
Yeah.
with this whole experience. So again, just finding support, whether it's therapy, support group, or you guys talk to each other, like,
Yeah, because you're
it's,
not, you're really not alone, because you have a community, but the immediate is that you have each other. You guys
yeah.
are going through that together. You guys are both the parents of them,
And
of
there
the
was so
child.
many
So
times where we would, to even till this day, I mean, just recently we talked about certain fears that we have and certain challenges that we know are coming as adults.
hmm.
Like, we talk about it and we're like, oh my God, you feel the same way. I,
Hmm.
I feel the same way. Like, but we just don't say it because it's like, you don't want to say it because it makes it more real. But
Yeah.
not saying it also doesn't make it go away,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So again, I that's my biggest piece of advice, is if you are a married couple, I definitely, just don't stop communicating about, the challenges that come with being a special needs parent. But also reach out, if you need outside help, reach out for that as well. And
Yeah.
if you're a single parent, yeah, that's very, I can't even imagine. But again, there's just so much help out there, community, you know other parents that are also raising their kids on their own. We're definitely not alone. I've learned that having a child on the spectrum, or just a special needs child, like, there's so many people out there
Yeah.
facing very similar challenges. And we just keep showing up.
Yeah, going through and feeling the same emotions too. That
Mm-hmm.
you're just like, oh, only I'm feeling this, but it's like, no, it's
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of normal to
Yeah.
feel what you're feeling. So
And if you want to start a podcast and talk about it,
yeah, that's
because this
always good
has
therapy.
I mean, this really, um, it's unfortunate that we don't talk about it enough. I think this is probably going to be one of the episodes that maybe reaches out the most to people,
I
because
hope. I hope so.
it's again, I don't know why. It's, again, it's not shame. It's not that. I think it's just because we're still trying to figure a lot of
Yeah.
things out. Just because we've been a parent of a special needs, or two special needs individuals, for 15 plus years doesn't mean we got to figure it out. I
Yeah.
wish we can give better answers. Um, it's just day by day. That's really it. That's all we can really say about it, because, for all we know, maybe Jude will wake up tomorrow and then he starts talking to us, and then what do we do with that?
I hope he has like a Scottish accent for
I
some
think he
reason, or
does.
like an English
I
accent
think
at
he
least.
does. I still think he's faking it, but
Well,
I don't
Jonah
know.
had the Japanese accent for a little bit
Oh,
on
he
some of
did.
his
He
words.
did.
But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Like Jess mentioned, this was probably the most personal episode that we have done yet. Um, but again, I think this is why we started this podcast, to kind of have these kind of conversations, and it's for us. It's for us to kind of let things out and kind of just remember certain things, but it's also to hopefully help, you know, someone out there that may be going
Yeah.
through the same thing or knows someone that's going through the same thing. um, and if you are, like we said, reach out to your, your local regional center. If you're looking for evaluations, reach out to your normal doctor. But yeah, there's a lot of resources that you can find online if you want to know more about autism, or what early, what are the signs, what are the symptoms to look for if you're, a new parent. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of help out there, so it's
Yeah.
at your fingertips. But
Yeah.
all right, guys, so we will wrap it up. We look forward to seeing you come back for our next episode. We don't know what that will be yet, but again, we hope that it will be entertaining for you. But until then, you guys have an amazing day.
Yeah. Bye.